Play, and I will marry you, the girl laughed, until the janitor sat down at the piano. The grand ballroom of Harrington University was ablaze with chandeliers and laughter. Tonight was the annual gala, where the rich flaunted their wealth, and their children flaunted their talent. The stage was reserved for the elite children of donors and board members who performed music pieces to impress. Among them was Evelyn, a radiant young woman in a silver gown, daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the city. She was elegant, confident, and adored. A group of admirers circled her, hanging on to every word she said. Her laughter rang out when one of them teased, "Evelyn, you'll never find someone good enough unless he can play like Liszt himself." Smiling, she raised her glass and joked, "Fine then, play, and I will marry you." The group erupted in laughter. To them, it was just a playful challenge. But in the corner of the hall, pushing a mop and bucket, stood Daniel, the university's janitor. He was quiet, unnoticed, and often mocked for his simple job. Yet when Evelyn's words echoed through the room, his eyes lifted toward the piano standing lonely on stage. "Hey, janitor?" One of the smug students sneered. "You want to marry? Evelyn, go on then, play us something." The crowd laughed cruelly. Evelyn gave a dismissive wave. "Don't be silly." "He's not," but she stopped when she saw something different in Daniel's eyes. Not embarrassment, not fear, but calm, steady determination. He put down his mop, walked to the stage, and sat before the glossy black grand piano. The room fell silent at first. His hands hovered hesitantly over the keys, then, with a deep breath, he began. Soft, haunting notes filled the hall. A melody of longing and fire, sorrow and triumph, pouring from his soul as though the piano itself was breathing with him. Conversations died, jaws dropped. Some felt their eyes sting without knowing why. Evelyn's mocking smile faded, her chest tightened as she watched him, this man in worn shoes and a janitor's uniform, transform into someone entirely different under the light. When the final note lingered and vanished, the hall was so silent, one could hear the chandeliers hum. Then, thunderous applause erupted. People leaped to their feet. Daniel stood, quietly bowing, then turned to leave. But Evelyn rose, her voice trembling. "Wait." All eyes turned to her. She stepped forward, her silver gown catching the light, her heart pounding louder than the applause. Where did you learn to play like that?" she whispered. Daniel met her gaze, his voice calm, almost sad. "I used to play in concert halls, but life had other plans. The piano was all I had left." The weight of his words sank deep into her. For the first time in her gilded world, Evelyn saw beyond appearances, saw the man, not the uniform. Her challenge from before hung heavy in the air. "Play, and I will marry you." The crowd waited, holding its breath. Evelyn's cheeks flushed as she whispered, "I wasn't joking anymore." Daniel gave the faintest smile, shook his head gently, and replied, "Don't promise marriage for music, but if you truly want to know me, we can start with a walk." And with that, the janitor who had humbled an entire ballroom walked off, the stage leaving Evelyn breathless, and the room forever changed. The Harrington University Gala was more than just a charity event. It was a spectacle and unspoken contest of wealth, charm, and talent. Music swelled through the hall as the city's young elite displayed their skills at the grand piano on stage. Each piece was rehearsed, polished, and meant to dazzle donors. Among them sat Evelyn Harrington, daughter of the university's most powerful benefactor. Dressed in a silver gown that glittered under the chandeliers, she was the center of attention. Her laugh was melodic, practiced, designed to charm. A circle of suitors hovered around her, eager to win her approval. "None of you are good enough for her, unless you can outplay Beethoven himself." One of them teased. Evelyn raised her glass, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Fine then, play, and I will marry you." The group erupted with laughter, treating it as the joke it was meant to be. Evelyn smirked, amused at their nervous chuckles. But at the far edge of the ballroom, pushing a mop, stood Daniel, the janitor, invisible to most, pitied by some, mocked by others. His uniform was worn, his shoes scuffed, yet his eyes carried a depth none of the glittering guests noticed. Double quotes, "Hey, janitor," one of the rich boys shouted cruelly, seizing the moment. "You heard her. Want a bride tonight? Go on, play for her." The room rippled with laughter. Evelyn lifted her hand as if to dismiss the cruelty, but then her gaze lingered on Daniel. She expected him to shrink away. Instead, he paused. His mop rested against the wall. He straightened, adjusted his sleeves, and walked calmly toward the stage. The laughter stuttered. Murmurs began. Daniel sat at the piano, his rough hands hovering over the polished keys. For a moment, the hall waited, some smirking, some curious. Evelyn caught between embarrassment and intrigue. Then the music began. Soft, aching notes unfurled like whispers of forgotten memories. They grew into something vast, a storm of passion and grief and triumph. His hands moved with effortless mastery, each chord alive, each pause deliberate. The ballroom disappeared. The chandeliers, the glittering gowns, the mocking eyes faded. Only the music remained. Some guests wept without understanding why. Others stared, captivated. Evelyn's chest rose and fell quickly, her pulse racing. She had heard many performances in her life, hollow, practiced, designed to impress. But this was different. This was raw truth, poured into every note. When Daniel struck the final chord, silence swallowed the room. Then, an eruption of applause shook the hall. Daniel stood, bowed once, and turned to leave. "Wait." Evelyn's voice cracked through the thunder. She rose, her silver gown flowing behind her as she hurried toward him. Her eyes were wide, vulnerable in a way no one had seen before. How did you, her words tangled. "You play like a master." Daniel's gaze met hers, calm but shadowed. "I used to be one," he said softly. "Carnegie Hall, Vienna. But life, it doesn't always follow the script we write for it." A hush fell. Even the mocking rich boys stood frozen, unable to laugh. Evelyn swallowed hard, the echo of her own challenge burning in her mind. Planned, "I will marry you." For the first time, she wasn't smiling. Her voice was almost a whisper. "I wasn't joking anymore." Daniel studied her face. Then, gently, he shook his head. "Don't give your hand for music alone. But if you want, we could start with something simple. A walk, a conversation." Her breath caught. For once, Evelyn Harris, darling of the elite, wasn't the one in control. And as Daniel walked away, she knew her world had shifted forever.